All right, a man who was charged with attempted assault against New York Republican gubernatorial candidate Lee Zeldin at a campaign stop last night was released almost immediately after the attack because of the state's cashless bail laws. Last night, Zeldin, who ironically was speaking about that very issue, cashless bail, was unharmed after grabbing the man's wrist to stop him before others at the event tackled the suspect. In a tweet after the attack, Zeldin correctly predicted that his assailant would be instantly released, and he was. Earlier this afternoon, President Biden released a statement condemning the attack and thanked law enforcement officers for quickly taking action. Joining us with reaction today's company, radio talk show host Mary Walter and the host of the Derek Hunter Show and senior columnist for townhall.com, Derek Hunter. Good to see you both. You know, Mary, there's no information yet about this guy and whether he was a leftist, but he did appear inebriated. It doesn't really go to the core of what Lee Zeldin's talking about, is like the soft on crime laws. I mean, this is so ironic that Zeldin's talking about cashless bail. The guy gets arrested for assaulting him and then immediately released.
Of course he did. This is New York. What bothers me, though, is that we have to find out. We all have to hold our opinions until we find out whether he's a leftist or he's on the right, or we find out what his politics are. Gone are the days of wrong being wrong. Right? It shouldn't matter where this guy came from party-wise before we decide to be outraged or not. Now, President Biden has come out and condemned this, which is great. Kathy Hochul condemned this. But the left has a problem with messaging, and it's starting to bite them in the butt. Kathy Hochul put out a bulletin, supposedly only released to the press, with all of Zeldin's stops on his campaign stops, and urged people to go to these campaign stops. And she used the words, the big lie, MAGA caravan, dangerous lies, extremists, right-wing extremists associated. There'll be pro-abortion adherents there. There'll be NRA enthusiasts there. There's a lot of very, I think, insightful language that was used in that. And the left does this all the time. It's never about the policies. It's about the person, and it's about the people who want to vote for that person. You are a horrible person. And I think that gives people like this guy, I guess, some kind of reason to go after them. He feels like he's justified to do something he probably never would have done if he were born a generation earlier, because these are bad people. So he has to, he has to act and do something right, on the moral high ground. It's a dangerous path.
Well, here's the thing, Derek. As Mary pointed out, you have the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, obviously on her campaign website, but putting out where Lee Zeldin is going to be, not saying, hey, go there, be peaceful. You can only imagine she wants people to go there and cause a scene, to heckle them. And now this, some are saying that she's responsible for this. Obviously, we don't know if this person saw it, but it does have you wonder, why is she trying to get people to go there and almost harass Lee Zeldin?
I'm old enough to remember when crosshairs on a map over Kathy Gifford's district led to a decade of blaming Sarah Palin for that on a website that there's no reason to think that Jared Lee Loughner had ever been to. So I guess the most surprising thing is that assaulting a Republican in New York is a crime, even a grade C felony. But I love how he's charged with attempted assault. What I saw in that video is assault. He's got his Hello Kitty puncture stab wound rings on, and he's going up there to do harm. He says, you're done. It is not, you're done, now please leave the stage. It is, you're done with a deadly weapon and the intent to use it. And the outrage is universal, but it's also the tap and putt of pretend outrage. It's virtue signaling. The president released a statement. He still hasn't said anything about the plot to kill Brett Kavanaugh, by the way. But he released a statement. Kathy Hochul sent out a tweet. Good, I suppose, if it's better than doing nothing, but it's literally the closest you can get to doing nothing while still doing something. There has to be universal condemnation of this. It's been this way since James Hodgkinson tried to kill Republicans on the baseball field, something I know that Sean knows about intimately. And you sit there and you say, this is going to escalate. Mary was right. If you're telling people that the other side is Hitler constantly, sooner or later, somebody who's off in the head is going to go, well, I have a chance to assassinate Hitler in 1933. I have a moral obligation to take it. And that's a problem when everything is Hitler.
Right. Mary, I do want to switch gears because there's a column in the Washington Post by Perry Bacon that I thought was so interesting. You've got Biden's poll numbers just falling. And Bacon makes the case that the negative coverage from the mainstream press is to blame for this. He writes, the mainstream media has played a huge underappreciated role in President Biden's declining support over the past year. Yes, I am calling for the media to cover Biden more positively. Ideally, on every issue, the media would compare the Republican and Democratic solutions. You can see how this model might help Biden. So here's the thing. The whole government right now is controlled by the Democrats. So, I mean, on his face, that's ridiculous.
It's the ultimate in self-unawareness, isn't it? It's not about the policies. It's about the way the media is covering the president. That's what it's about. They are so entrenched in their philosophy, their ideology. You know, the government is their religion. And if you've ever tried to have a discussion with someone about their religion, something that they firmly, deeply believe in, you can't win. You just don't have those discussions. This is why you can't have these discussions with the left. They will never see what is wrong with their policies. It always has to be something else. It has to be someone else's fault. It's the Republicans' fault. It's Putin's fault. Now it's the media's fault, which I find interesting because the media carries their water for them. What more can they possibly do to support Joe Biden? Look what they did before the election. Look what social media did before the election. What more does he want? I don't know what else you can do.
Yeah. Derek, before we go, I do want to get your take on this. As we mentioned earlier, the New York Times has 8 opinion columnists revisiting stories that they've done in the past and reflecting on why they were wrong. One of them, Brett Stevens, he actually penned a piece called I Was Wrong About Trump Voters. He writes this: what Trump supporters saw was a candidate whose entire being was a proudly raised middle finger at a self-satisfied elite that had produced a failing status quo. I was blind to this. I mean, does this absolve them?
No, it doesn't. It's something you have to do if you're ever at a wine tasting. In between each sip, you take a sip of water to cleanse your palate. They cleanse their palate. They're ready to back and belly back up to the bar and do it all over again. They just are. Brett Stevens having this epiphany. The sad thing is it took him 5 years to have this epiphany and to recognize that Russian collusion was a hoax. You don't get credit for sitting around sipping Chardonnay, having a chat with Peggy Noonan and realizing that the little people are not quite as revolting as you stereotype them to be. I'm sorry. It is as obvious as the sun rising in the east that Donald Trump supporters saw something in him that the elites didn't. The job of a journalist, even an opinion journalist, is to find out what that is and why, not simply condemn it like it's problematic and run away from it back to your little sewing circle of safety spaces.